I stood in the bridal suite of the luxurious Sterling Country Club, the air thick with the scent of fresh peonies and overpriced champagne. Outside, the soft hum of pre-ceremony chaos filled the halls, wedding coordinators barking last-minute instructions, bridesmaids giggling in nervous excitement, guests being ushered to their seats. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Except for one thing. I wasn't wearing the flowing white gown that hung pristine on a silk hanger behind me. I wasn't adorned in lace and pearls, waiting for my cue to walk down the aisle toward the man who was supposed to be my future. Instead, I was dressed in a sharp, tailored navy blue suit. The deep color was a deliberate choice, one that exuded quiet power, a controlled storm beneath the surface. Today was meant to be the happiest day of my life. A day that had been meticulously planned, down to the minute details, the seating arrangements, the floral arrangements, even the way the light would hit the grand ballroom at sunset. My fiancé, Nate, had been the perfect partner in the process, charming the vendors with his smooth smile and endless confidence. He was a doctor, respected and admired, the kind of man people naturally gravitated toward. For years, I had believed that despite our flaws, we were solid. Sure, we fought often. He called me cold and demanding. I called him arrogant and careless, but every couple had their struggles. Relationships weren't perfect, and love wasn't always easy. At least, that's what I told myself when the doubts crept in late at night, when his touch started to feel distant, when his phone was always face down on the table. I should have trusted my instincts. The signs were there, in the subtle ways he shifted when I walked into the room, in the way his tone changed when he answered certain calls. I told myself I was being paranoid, that stress from wedding planning was warping my perception. Then, I found the messages. Hundreds of them. Hidden in archived folders, buried in encrypted apps, tucked away where he thought I'd never look. All from her. Grace. His ex-girlfriend. The one he swore was just a part of his past. The one he claimed had meant nothing after she walked out on him years ago. But she was never truly gone. The messages weren't innocent. They weren't friendly catch-ups or nostalgic musings. They were passionate, desperate, explicit. They spoke of stolen weekends at boutique hotels, of lies carefully crafted to keep me unaware, of the way he missed her body, her laugh, the way she made him feel like he was the most powerful man in the room. I could have stopped there. I could have closed the laptop, confronted him in private, screamed and cried and asked him why. But something inside me refused to break that easily. So, I dug deeper. A hidden flash drive, tucked away in the depths of his office drawer, held more than just words. It held proof. Hotel surveillance footage of them checking in, his hand on the small of her back, the familiarity in his touch. Screensh *TS of their texts, damning in their clarity. Even an audio recording of Nate himself, speaking to a friend, laughing about how easy it was to keep me in the dark. That was the moment I made my decision. I wasn't going to walk away quietly. I wasn't going to let him rewrite the story, cast himself as the hero who had simply made a mistake, or worse, paint me as the woman who drove him into another's arms. No. Nate was about to learn that I wasn't the type of woman who crumbled under betrayal. I was the type of woman who turned the tables. I had spent years building a life with this man, believing in a future that he had secretly dismantled. He thought he was in control, that he could have his wedding and his mistress too, that I would forever play the role of the dutiful, unsuspecting bride. But today, our wedding day, I was going to show him just how wrong he was. I smoothed the lapels of my suit, taking one last look at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't heartbroken. She wasn't defeated. She was ready. And Nate had no idea what was coming. The moment I found that flash drive, I knew I had two choices: walk away quietly or burn everything to the ground. I chose the latter. But I wasn't reckless, I was strategic. Nate had spent years thinking he was the smartest man in the room, believing his charm and carefully crafted lies were enough to keep me blind. He thought he was in control. That was his first mistake. His second mistake? Underestimating the kind of woman I am. I didn't just want to leave him. I wanted to make sure that when I did, he would never forget it. So, I started planning. For weeks, I played the perfect fiancé, smiling through cake tastings and seating charts while secretly orchestrating the most unforgettable wedding day of all time. I wasn't going to stop at exposing his infidelity. I was going to dismantle his entire carefully curated life, piece by piece. I couldn't do it alone, though. That's where Ellie came in. Ellie had been my best friend since college, the kind of woman who knew how to turn disaster into spectacle. When I told her what I had found, she didn't cry for me. She didn't tell me to cancel the wedding and move on. She simply said, "Tell me what you need." And so, the plan was born. Every detail was carefully arranged. The videographer, the one Nate had insisted we hire, claiming he wanted to capture every moment. What he didn't know was that I had hired an additional videographer, one who was recording his actions before the ceremony. Every nervous glance at his phone, every hushed conversation, every subtle indication that he was waiting for her. The USB drive, the incriminating evidence, wasn't just sitting in my purse for a private confrontation. It was already connected to the venue's display system. A single click, and everything from his late-night texts to hotel security footage would play for an audience of hundreds. The private investigator, Ellie, had connections, and with her help, I found a private investigator willing to go undercover as catering staff. His job? Eavesdrop on conversations, document Nate's family's reactions, and most importantly, keep an eye on Grace. The fake bride. This was Ellie's masterpiece. Finding someone who resembled me enough to fool guests from a distance wasn't easy, but she managed it. Sam, a theater actress from our university days, was more than willing to play along. She'd wear my wedding dress, walk down the aisle, and stand at the altar with Nate, at least until the perfect moment arrived. My father, he had always said he'd do anything to protect me. When I told him the truth, I expected anger, disappointment, but instead, he simply nodded. "So, what's the plan?" he asked. I told him. He didn't flinch. He just said, "I'll handle the technical setup." That's how I found myself here, in the bridal suite, moments away from pulling off the most satisfying revenge imaginable. But there was one more element, the part that made this all so poetic. Nate thought he was the mastermind of today's chaos. Because Nate had his own surprise planned for me. That was the final piece of the puzzle. In the days leading up to the wedding, Ellie had overheard a conversation between Nate and his best man. Nate, in his infinite arrogance, had arranged for several planted guests to stand up during the engagement toast and accuse me of infidelity. He had planned to make a scene, to humiliate me in front of everyone, to call off the wedding on his terms. He had no idea that someone else was controlling the game now. I checked my phone one last time. Ellie's message came through, short and sweet. "Everything is in place." He's still texting her. He has no idea. Perfect. Outside, I could hear the murmur of guests settling into their seats. The music was starting. The wedding was about to begin. Nate thought today was about his perfect revenge. He had no idea that in a matter of minutes, his entire life was about to come crashing down around him. And I would be the one standing there, watching it burn. The lakeside terrace of Sterling Country Club was breathtaking, exactly as I had envisioned when I first started planning this wedding. Rows of elegant white chairs lined the aisle, the floral arch overflowing with soft pink roses and hydrangeas. A string quartet played softly in the background, setting the scene for what was meant to be the happiest day of my life. Guests were taking their seats, laughing and chatting, completely unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. And Nate? He was standing at the altar, his polished image on full display. Dressed in a custom black tuxedo, hairstyled to perfection, he looked every bit the perfect groom, calm, confident, completely oblivious to the fact that he was walking into his own destruction. I watched from an upstairs window in the bridal suite, my pulse steady, my expression unreadable. Sam, my stand-in, was already in position. The veil covered her face just enough to hide any small differences between us. From the back, she was nearly indistinguishable. The guests wouldn't notice. Nate certainly wouldn't. Not until it was too late. My phone buzzed with a message from Ellie, who was stationed discreetly in the crowd. "Ellie, Grace is here. Front row, left side." Exactly where you said she'd be. Wearing blue. I smirked. Nate had told her to sit in the front row? The arrogance. The audacity. Me. How does she look? Ellie. Smug as hell. She keeps checking her phone. I bet she thinks he's about to send her some secret signal. I could only imagine what was going through Grace's mind. Maybe she thought this was their last big moment before he humiliated me in front of everyone. Maybe she thought she was about to get her happy ending. Too bad for her, I had rewritten the script. The music changed, the signal that the ceremony was starting. I turned my attention back to the scene unfolding below. Guests turned in their seats as the processional began. The bridesmaids, the groomsmen, all walking down the aisle as expected. Nate's best man, Derek, stood at the altar, completely unaware of the disaster looming over his best friend's head. And then, finally, the bride stepped out. Sam. From my vantage point, I could see the way Nate's shoulders relaxed when he caught sight of her walking toward him. Of course, he had no idea that the woman under the veil wasn't me. He had no idea that I was standing upstairs, watching as he unknowingly said, "I do," to a stranger. I watched as Sam moved gracefully down the aisle, each step bringing her closer to the moment of revelation. Nate had no clue. His mother wiped away a tear. His father stood proudly. The guests whispered about how beautiful the bride looked. Everything was perfect. Exactly as I had planned. My phone buzzed again. Ellie. He keeps checking his phone. No doubt waiting for her response. Oh, this was too good. Nate was expecting Grace to make a move soon. He had planted guests ready to interrupt, to claim I had cheated on him, to humiliate me before he, heroically, walked away from the wedding. But Grace wasn't the one holding the cards anymore. The officiant began speaking, his voice smooth and warm, welcoming everyone to witness the joyous union. Nate stood tall, a smirk barely concealed at the corner of his mouth. He thought he was the one in control. He thought this was going to be his moment. His downfall was seconds away. I watched as Sam reached the altar. The officiant continued, guiding them through the ceremony. The guests were enraptured, smiling at the beautiful couple standing before them. And then, boom, the projector flickered to life. At first, people assumed it was a simple technical glitch. The slideshow of our engagement photos had been scheduled to play at the reception, so when the screen behind Nate and Sam suddenly came on, there was only mild confusion. But then, the images changed. The image on the screen was grainy at first, like an old security feed struggling to focus. The guests barely had time to register what they were seeing before the footage became unmistakably clear. A hotel lobby. The timestamp in the corner read 2 weeks ago. And there, in perfect high definition, was Nate. He wasn't alone. Grace stood beside him, her hand on his chest, her head tilted in that asterisk mate way only lovers do. The next clip showed them at the check-in desk, the receptionist sliding a room key across the counter. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone murmured, "Oh my God." Nate's entire body went rigid. I could see his jaw clenching, even from my vantage point upstairs. He turned sharply, his expression shifting from confusion to pure panic. What the hell? His voice was barely audible over the growing murmurs of the guests. The footage cut to another angle, an elevator camera. Nate and Grace were stepping inside, his arms sliding around her waist. Then came the real kicker, the grainy hallway footage of them disappearing into a hotel suite together. And just like that, the wedding was over. The officiant stepped back instinctively, sensing the shift in the air. Sam, still in the bridal gown, remained motionless, her veil covering just enough of her face to hide her amusement. I could see Grace from here, sitting in the front row, her face draining of all color. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to be the one caught. More images flickered across the screen, screech asterisk TS of text messages. Nate, baby, I can't wait until this wedding is over. It's always been you. Grace, I know. She'll never see it coming. Nate, we'll be together soon. Just sit tight. Let me handle the fallout. The guests were no longer whispering, they were talking openly, shock and disbelief painting their faces. Nate spun toward the best man. Turn that off, He barked. Shut it down. But Derek was frozen. So was the entire wedding party. And then, the final moment. The bride lifted her veil. Nate turned back, expecting to see me. Instead, he saw Sam. I had never seen a man look more horrified in my entire life. A strangled, choked noise left his throat. What? The silence was thick. The guests, his parents, his colleagues, the hospital board members, were all staring at the woman standing in the wedding dress. A woman who was very much not me. Oh, Sam said, smiling sweetly. You didn't think you were actually marrying Lauren, did you? Nate staggered back. His face was pure disbelief, as if his brain had short-circuited. Where is she? That was my cue. I stepped forward from the back of the terrace, the navy blue suit feeling like armor as I walked toward him. The murmurs exploded into full-on chaos. I met Nate's eyes head-on, watching the horror dawn in them as he realized the truth. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't broken. I was smiling. Hi, Nate, I said smoothly. Surprised? It took him a second to recover. His gaze darted between me, the fake bride, and the screen, as if any of this could still be salvaged. Then, his panic turned to rage. What the hell is wrong with you? He hissed, taking a step toward me. You did this? You ruined our wedding. I laughed. Our wedding? I echoed. Oh, sweetheart. You ruined this months ago when you started screwing your ex. The crowd was eating this up. Grace *T to her feet, face bright red. You set me up. I turned to her, feigning innocence. Set you up? Oh no, Grace. I just gave everyone a front row seat to the truth. Nate's father, one of the hospital's senior administrators, looked at him with pure disgust. His mother was clutching her pearls like she was seconds away from fainting. You've humiliated us, she whispered harshly. No, I corrected. He humiliated you. Nate turned back to me, his voice low and seething. You think this is funny? Do you have any idea what you've done? I tilted my head, pretending to think. Oh, I don't know. Exposed you for the lying, cheating bastard you are? Put your career at risk? Saved myself from marrying an absolute joke of a man. His hands balled into fists at his sides. You'll regret this. I grinned. I doubt it. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse for him, the second video started playing. It wasn't just about the cheating. No, this was the real bombshell. A recorded conversation. His voice booming through the speakers for everyone to hear. Nate, Lauren is so naive, man. She actually thinks I love her. Derek, then why marry her? Nate, because it's perfect. She's got the connections. The money. And once I get through the wedding, I can milk this for all it's worth. Alimony, joint accounts, maybe even a quiet settlement if I play my cards right. Derek, damn. That's cold. Nate, it's not personal. It's just smart. The gasp from the crowd was almost deafening. His own best man looked like he wanted to sink into the earth. Nate's mother, who had once called me the best thing that ever happened to him, slapped him. The sound echoed. His father's voice was deadly quiet. You're a disgrace. Grace? Oh, she was done. She grabbed her clutch and stormed out, her heels clicking furiously against the stone. And Nate, pathetic, humiliated Nate, was left standing there, completely unraveled. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just for him. You thought you were going to play me, I whispered. But I don't lose, Nate. Ever. He opened his mouth, probably to spit some last-minute insult. But then the two men in suits stepped forward. Hospital administrators. His bosses. Dr. Callahan, one of them said, voice ice-cold. We need to have a serious conversation about your future at the hospital. Nate went completely still. I leaned in one last time. Enjoy unemployment, sweetheart. Then I turned on my heel and walked away, head high, heart free, never looking back. I walked out of the terrace, the cool evening air hitting my face as I stepped inside the grand ballroom where the reception was supposed to take place. Behind me, chaos reigned. Guests were still murmuring, whispering in scandalous excitement. Nate was frozen, his world collapsing around him in real time. His mother had just slapped him in front of everyone. Grace had stormed off, her heels clicking like G** and fire against the pavement. His hospital administrators were already discussing the next steps, which, judging by their tight, grim expressions, did not bode well for him. But I was done with all of it. Ellie was already inside, waiting by the bar with a champagne flute in hand. The second she saw me, she grinned. Holy **T. I smirked, walking over to her and grabbing the glass she had waiting for me. Was it everything you hoped for? Oh, babe. Ellie laughed, clinking her glass against mine. It was so much more. The slap? Chef's kiss. I took a slow sip, savoring the cold bubbles as I exhaled. The tension that had lived in my chest for months, ever since I found out about Nate and Grace, was finally gone. The ballroom was still decorated exactly as planned, as if nothing had changed. The massive floral arrangements, the twinkling lights, the perfectly arranged tables with name cards meticulously placed. It was surreal, standing there in the middle of it all, knowing that this was supposed to be my wedding reception. Except now it wasn't. It was just a party. And I had just given every single guest the most unforgettable show of their lives. Ellie's phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen before bursting into laughter. What? I asked, raising a brow. She turned the phone toward me, still giggling. A text from one of our mutual friends. This is better than any reality show I've ever seen. Tell Lauren I owe her a drink. I rolled my eyes but couldn't stop the satisfied smirk from spreading across my lips. The texts were rolling in. Guests were eating this up. Some were pissed, mostly Nate's family, trying to salvage what they could. Some were loving every second of it. And Nate? Well, according to Ellie's latest update, he was still standing in the wreckage of his own humiliation, shell-shocked. Derek just tried to talk to him, Ellie reported, checking another message. Apparently, Nate shoved him and told him to fix this. She cackled. As if Derek has the power to unslap him in front of 200 people. I snorted. Serves him right. At that moment, my father walked in. He had been watching from the sidelines, his arms crossed as he observed the disaster unfold. Now, he approached me with an expression that was equal parts concern and admiration. Kiddo, he said, shaking his head. You really went all out. I shrugged. Would you have expected anything less? He sighed, rubbing his temple before finally grinning. You're your mother's daughter, that's for damn sure. Then, without hesitation, he turned to the bartender. Whiskey. Neat. Ellie and I both burst out laughing. I should have felt devastated. Heartbroken. Maybe even embarrassed. But all I felt was free. Nate was exposed. Grace was gone. His career? Hanging by a thread. And me? I was standing in a stunning ballroom, surrounded by friends and family, drinking champagne, looking like $1,000,000 in my navy blue suit. I was untouchable. Ellie nudged me. So, what now? I exhaled, watching as more guests slowly trickled in, hesitant but curious. I thought about it for a second. Then I set my glass down, smoothed the lapels of my suit, and turned to the DJ. Play something fun, I said. The DJ blinked. Wait, we're still? Yes, I smirked. We're still having a party. The second the music started, Ellie cheered. My father, still shaking his head, raised his glass in a silent toast. And just like that, I walked onto the dance floor as if I hadn't just publicly annihilated my cheating ex-fiancé. The guests who stayed? They loved it. They toasted to me. They danced with me. And as the night went on, as I laughed with the people who truly cared about me, I realized something. This was never supposed to be Nate's night. It was always mine. The party was in full swing now. The guests who had stuck around, the ones who weren't running damage control for Nate, were thriving. At first, they had been hesitant, hovering near the bar, whispering about whether it was appropriate to stay. But once they realized I was completely unbothered, drinking champagne and dancing in my navy blue suit like I hadn't just detonated my engagement in front of 200 people, they let loose. Ellie was on her third drink and was currently trying to convince my dad to dance. My dad, The man who had just watched me ruin a man's life with the precision of a heart surgeon. Ellie was relentless, tugging at his sleeve until he finally sighed and gave in. I nearly choked on my champagne when he did a surprisingly decent spin. Damn, I called over the music. Did not see that coming. He **T me a smirk. You think I raised you and don't know how to make an exit look good? Fair. Meanwhile, the videographer, who had been hired to capture a beautiful love story, but instead filmed the demolition of a relationship, was still lurking. He had gotten everything. The reveal. The reactions. The slap. All of it. At one point, I caught him near the bar, sipping a beer like he had just witnessed history. I raised a brow at him. You okay there? He shook his head slowly, still in mild shock. Ma'am, this is the best gig I've ever had. Ellie cackled. Make sure we get the highlight reel. Meanwhile, Nate was gone. Ellie had been tracking updates all night, giddy as hell. The last message from one of our sources, i.e., a gleeful bridesmaid who hated him, said that he had stormed out of the country club, yelling at Derek, and peeled out of the parking lot like a man running from the FBI. Which, honestly, might not be too far off soon. Because I had one more surprise for him. I stepped outside, champagne glass in hand, and pulled out my phone. Ellie followed, still giggling. What are we doing? I smirked. Pressing send. Ellie gasped. Wait, is this the moment? The moment. I scrolled to my email drafts. There it was. An email to the hospital board. Attached were the documents. The proof of Nate falsifying medical reports to cover up his mistakes. See, for Nate, cheating was just a hobby. Lying? That was his real *LL. But you can only hide malpractice for so long before someone with a grudge, me, decides to shine a giant spotlight on it. Ellie bounced on her heels. Press it, press it, press it. I smirked. And then, I pressed send. Ellie let out a victorious screech. It was done. By morning, the hospital board would receive everything. His inappropriate patient handling, his falsified reports, his conveniently lost records. And in a career like his, he was screwed. I turned to Ellie. Drinks? She grinned. Drinks. We went back inside, where my dad was now winning over half the guests with his surprisingly elite dance moves. The night continued. The guests stayed. The music blasted. And me? I laughed. I drank. I danced like I hadn't just completely unraveled a man's life. Because I had. And it felt so damn good. The next morning, I woke up with a headache, not from regret, but from victory. Ellie was sprawled on the couch in my hotel suite, one arm over her face, still in her bridesmaid dress from the night before. A nearly empty bottle of champagne sat on the coffee table, along with our phones, which had been blowing up all night. I stretched, rolling my neck before grabbing my phone. 74 unread messages. I smirked. Here we go. The first message was from my dad. Proud of you, kiddo. Hope you don't have a headache. Also, I made the country club's highlight reel. Apparently, my footwork was unparalleled. I snorted. Unparalleled? Jesus Christ. The next was from one of my bridesmaids, who had left early but had gotten the full report from the aftermath. Girl. Nate's mom was crying. Like, full-on shaking. Apparently, she kept saying, "We raised you better than this," while his dad just stood there in silence. Oof. I whistled low. Even I hadn't expected his mother to have a breakdown. Ellie groaned, rolling over and cracking one eye open. Anything good? I tossed my phone at her. Nate's mom had a meltdown. Ellie sat up so fast she nearly toppled off the couch. Wait, what? I leaned back, stretching my arms behind my head. Yep. Crying. Regret. The works. Ellie cackled. I mean, she should have raised a better son. I checked my emails. And there it was. An official message from the hospital board. Dear Miss Harper, we appreciate the evidence you have provided regarding Dr. Callahan's misconduct. Effective immediately, Dr. Callahan has been placed on administrative leave while we conduct an internal investigation. If you are available to discuss this matter further, please contact our office at your earliest convenience. I grinned. Ellie, still recovering from her laughing fit, looked over at my screen. Is that the email? I turned the screen toward her. Ellie screamed. Bitch, he's done. I laughed. Oh, he's so done. I could only imagine what his morning looked like. Probably waking up in a cold sweat, checking his emails, seeing that he's been suspended. Realizing that his career, his carefully built reputation, was crumbling in real time. That the woman he tried to humiliate just flipped the entire game on him. Ellie wiped fake tears from her eyes. I love a happy ending. I smirked, standing up. Come on. We're getting breakfast. Ellie groaned dramatically, flopping back onto the couch. Ugh, but my body is so tired from dancing for 5 hours straight. I grabbed a pillow and smacked her with it. She yelped. Bitch. I grinned. Get up. We have mimosas to drink. Ellie sighed deeply before finally rolling off the couch. Fine, but only because I love you. We got ready, threw on oversized sunglasses to hide the slight hangover, and headed downstairs. The hotel restaurant was packed, mostly with guests who had attended my disaster of a wedding. The second we walked in, the murmurs started. I could practically hear them. Is that her? She looks so unbothered. I still can't believe that actually happened last night. Honestly, she won. Damn right I did. Ellie leaned in, whispering, I swear to God, this is better than being famous. I laughed. We should start charging for interviews. We grabbed a table, ordered 2 mimosas and a ridiculous amount of food, and let the gossip swirl around us. Halfway through my 3rd mimosa, I got a text from an unknown number. Nate. I sighed, shaking my head. Ellie, guess who? She looked up from her waffles. No way. I turned the screen to her. Nate, we need to talk. Ellie screamed into a napkin. This man has the audacity. I sipped my mimosa, completely unbothered. Do we text back? Ellie grabbed my phone, stared at the screen for a second, then smirked. She typed one message and hit send. Then she slid my phone back to me, looking way too pleased with herself. I glanced down. We already did. You just weren't listening. Ellie slammed her mimosa down. And that's on closure. We clinked our glasses, toasting to the absolute train wreck of a man who thought he could get away with everything. I had walked away. And he? He was the one left in ruins. Ellie and I were still basking in our post-revenge glow when my phone buzzed again. Another message from Nate. Nate, this isn't funny, Lauren. You ruined my life. I showed the screen to Ellie. She snorted. Oh, now it's not funny? I sighed, sipping my mimosa. I love how he says I ruined his life, like he wasn't the one trying to humiliate me at our own wedding. Ellie tapped her chin, pretending to think. Yeah, you should totally feel bad for exposing a cheater and a fraud. Maybe you should also apologize for, I don't know, not letting him get away with it. We stared at each other. Then we burst out laughing. I didn't respond. Let him stew in his own disaster. Instead, I turned my focus back to my pancakes and the complimentary bottle of champagne the restaurant had sent over, a congratulations from the hotel staff who had, apparently, enjoyed every second of the wedding implosion. Ellie popped the cork dramatically. To the best almost wedding of all time. I smirked, raising my glass. And to never settling for a man like Nate ever again. We toasted. By the time we left the restaurant, I had 10 more texts from Nate. The last one? Nate, at least call me. You owe me that much. I stopped in my tracks. Ellie, still scrolling through her messages, she was getting fan mail at this point from mutuals who had witnessed everything, noticed my expression. Oh no, she said immediately. Do not tell me you're actually thinking about it. I scoffed. No, I'm just amazed. The nerve. Ellie rolled her eyes. The way these men love playing the victim when their own games blow up in their faces. I nodded, locking my phone. He gets nothing from me. Ellie cheered. Yes, queen. We spent the rest of the day relaxing, mani pedis, shopping, an afternoon at the spa. Everywhere we went, someone recognized me. A woman at the nail salon? You're the bride. That was iconic. A group of girls at the boutique? Girl, we saw the TikToks. You're a legend. I wasn't just the woman who had almost gotten married. I was the woman who had publicly ended a cheater's entire career and walked away looking fabulous. Even my dad texted again. "Dad, people at my golf club are asking if you'll give a TED Talk." I choked on my latte. Ellie screamed, "Please, do it." By the time we got back to the hotel that evening, I was recharged. That's when I got the final confirmation that my plan was fully complete. An email from one of the hospital administrators. "Dr. Callahan is no longer employed at this facility. We appreciate your cooperation during our internal investigation." Ellie read over my shoulder, her jaw dropping. Oh my God, they actually fired him. I grinned, satisfied. The perfect ending. I thought about texting Nate back. Something simple like, "Check your inbox," but honestly, he wasn't worth the effort. I closed my phone, flopped onto the hotel bed, and exhaled deeply. Ellie plopped down beside me. "So, what's next?" she asked. "New city? New job? Start a business? I feel like you should profit off this somehow." I laughed, staring at the ceiling. "Honestly, I think I'm just going to live. No wedding, no cheating fiancé, no settling. Just me." Ellie grinned. "You know what? That might be the best revenge of all." She was right.